Ready? All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to Town of Fort Myers Beach. Ms. Laura Jackson from the FDEP CCCL program volunteered to come down and help our residents and contractors out with any CCCL permit application questions or general questions about CCCL individual and general permits. So I will let her take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you so much to everybody here at the Fort Myers Beach office. Everybody has been so gracious and accommodating, and I just thank you all for having me here. This is not really a formal presentation per se. It's really an opportunity for me just to come and try to provide some guidance and some clarity because we're getting a lot of applications. I mean, obviously we know the storm happened when the storm happened, but now we're seeing a lot more applications come in, and a lot of people are just not understanding the nuances between the two different applications, and actually there's three, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But so I just figured the best thing to do is come down and do a presentation. Generally speaking, the DEP will go to areas that are impacted after a storm and do presentations, do outreach. It just took a while here because there was so much damage, and it takes a lot of time for people to, first of all, I think, get over the shock of what has happened to the area. And let me say, I do really understand people's plight and know that there is a need to get back to some sense of normalcy. And we here at the Control Line Program want that to happen, but we still have rules and regulations. So, I'm just here to try to give some clarity and to help people navigate through the various programs and processes as to what's required where. So I believe I've met some of you. Is by show of hand, how many people are actually agents or act as agents? What about property owners, interested persons? Okay, that's good. Because again, that way I can tailor my language. Because when it's agents, you can say certain things and they understand. I may say certain things to you and you're like, I don't know what that means. So, and I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but I do want to make sure that you're understanding what the vernacular is. Because, and if I go too fast, tell me slow down, because I will go. Because I've been doing this so much and so often that I can just run right through it. But I want to make sure that this is beneficial on both ends, my side and yours. So with that being said, unless anybody has any immediate questions right off the bat. Yes, sir.
You said you're part of the DEP program, the CCCL program. Is that a county program or a state?
No, so I am, okay, and you're right, maybe I thought Chad said, my name is Laura Jackson. I'm the environmental administrator for the Coastal Construction Control Line Program out of Tallahassee.
So state.
Yes, sir. And we, Fort Myers Beach, as well as the DEP, have our regulations as far as it relates to building within the beach area. So that's why I've come down here, is because even though you may go through the Fort Myers Beach process to get permits, you also have to go through a control line process. Because the area is up, I guess you see the images all around the room. That's Fort Myers Beach, and I have a set of aerials that our GIS team printed out for me. It goes from R Monument 178 to R Monument 210. I know that means nothing to most people, but that's how we live our life, by DEP monuments and by addresses. So one thing that most of you, and there's a couple of people here, and I don't want to name anybody, but there are a couple of people here that I've spoken to. They know one of the first things I ask if you call, where's your property address? Excuse me, where's your property address? Because I can go to this website that you see and put in your property address. And these are the things that I want to kind of show you, because again, it's really a basic, just let me show you how you get to where you need to get your own answers. And then if you need more guidance, my phone number and the ability to contact me. I'm always available to do so. But it's just so you understand some of the tools that are out there are available, and you can go to them and navigate through them without having any great permissions or needing great permissions. But the R monuments and the property address help us to identify where you are. And that red line is the coastal construction control line. The blue line is the general permit line. So the difference in those two lines is the difference in the application process. Yes, sir.
Is that the 78 or the 91 one?
91.
In my permitting issues, it has to do with the 78. Is that not part of it?
So sorry to chime in, so the 1978 CCCL is no longer referenced in state statute, but the town still uses it as a zoning line for the environmentally critical zone. So that's a zero setback line, so whenever you're constructing minor or major structures, that's where it's more of a town permitting rather than the state. The state statute only references the 1991, and that's where Ms. Solora's jurisdiction starts.
And not to say that it's not relevant or we no longer, like Chad just chimed in, yes, it's more of a local concern than it is a DEP concern. But however, understand from the control line to the mean high water is our concern. Doesn't matter what line is out there. That's what our program is designed for. We're supposed to be a program that regulates structures, and we try to make sure that the structures that we are regulating don't cause some significant adverse impacts to the beach and dune system, to the vegetation, and to the marine turtles. That's the whole essence of our program. So as a CCCL program, that's what we're charged to do. The reason we have the various lines is because that gives us opportunities to have different ways to get permits issued, processed. Because, like I just said, and I'll probably say things multiple times, but it's just because it just has to be said multiple times. Our responsibility is from the control line to the mean high water. So if we are looking at that in totality, there are ways to review things to see what are the impacts. What's interesting to me is the way the control line was established here, because I had nothing to do with the establishment of the control line. So let me say that in my defense, I didn't have anything to do with that. That was established long before I got here. But the control line, as you can see in that aerial right there, is landward of Estero Boulevard. So that means that even those houses that are partially captured, if they were going to rebuild in that location, would need our authorization. And to me, why? You're not anywhere close to impacting the beach and dune system, which is what, again, our charge is, making sure that we get the best benefit of a structure that's going to be in the area close to the beach and dune system. And we say that together, but they're literally independent. You've got the beach, and then you've got the dune. Now, granted, we know because of Ian, there is no dune. So all of that is beach, and all of that is a concern as far as siting and things of that concern. But the reason for the lines, again, is because it gives you different ways to get authorizations. Control line, GP line, we even have field permits. We even have the emergency process, because one of the other things that I wanted to basically show you, so Chad, if you can go back to like our home page on the website, and if I can navigate that myself, just let me know. Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so here, and I will tell you, this is a very good tool, because this is the web page that takes you to our home page. And it is Florida spelled out, DEP.gov/CCCL. And of course, everything is acronym driven, but it's Coastal Construction Control Line Program. So anytime you hear me say that, CCCL, that's what we're talking about, the Coastal Construction Control Line, which is who we are and who I represent. This homepage has everything from getting to the map direct. One of the things that I think is even more beneficial is like here where it says apply for, let's see, apply for and receive assistance. I don't know if I clicked that right. Yep. So here, it even gives you description of the various CCCL permitting forms. So you can click on these things. It even takes you to the link. It even has detailed instructions on how to apply for a CCCL permit. Now, granted, I do understand that for lay members to even click on these things, it still may be like you're reading Greek. But nevertheless, we have tried to do our due diligence. Now, I will say that when I was preparing, I started going to the website because I wouldn't like to tell you things that I have not even experienced myself. And there's some work I need to do as an administrator when I get back, because there's some languages on here that need to be corrected. There's some links on here because we discovered this in early May, that there's a link on here because it talks about how to submit documents electronically. And it's a great tool because it tells you that you can email and you get the benefit in the control line process when you're applying through the control line process to submit things electronically, because then it's a 10% discount. But if your file sizes can tend to be a little bit larger, that's what the instructions are to how to load things to the FTP site. Well, unbeknownst to us, because again, no offense to Jacob, who's doing a great job back there in IT, but IT people have a tendency to move stuff and they don't tell you they've moved it. And so they moved the FTP site and we didn't even know it. So here we got instruction telling people how to load things to the FTP site, not realizing that you were loading stuff and nobody knew you were loading it, because the instructions do tell you that when you load things, you have to send an email to the CCCL mailbox. So that way our administrative staff can assign those various documents to a file number. And if it's not sent there and the email, because there's so many DEP sites that use the FTP site for loading, if you don't send that email, we have no way of knowing which records go with which file, how they're supposed to be created. It would take a person probably well over half a day to go through all of the items in there to even figure out what belongs to a specific person. Is everybody with me so far? So this is a good tool because, like I said, it does give you a little bit of instruction about how to do things, what the various forms are for. Like it says, it kind of gave you the same brief description of what I said about our control line program. So that's a good tool on our website. Equally on our website, as I was saying about the maps. So that is a link right here. It says Map Direct, and I won't click on it because they already have it shown. But that is how you get to that map, by clicking on that Map Direct. And that's how you, to me, is the first way to identify where your property is relative to the control line. Once you identify that, then you can say, okay, am I landward of the GP line, but seaward of the control line? Okay, well then that's probably the process I need to follow. Or if I'm seaward of the GP line, even though I may be seaward of the GP line, would I still even qualify for a permit? Yeah, so I was trying to go in another direction, but I figured I'd finish that train of thought. So even with the Map Direct, it's good to at least understand where you are geographically, because that may help you understand where you can get the information that you'd like to receive in terms of knowing, okay, this is where I think I might be. You can always flip back to that, ask and see, okay, well, this gives me a description of what I need to do. Maybe this might be my best shot. Forms, because that's where I wanted to hang out a little bit, because this shows the various applications. What's confusing to most people is because CCCL permit application related, and it says here individual and area-wide permits, and then it comes down here and says general permits. Most people, because of, in vernacular and semantics is everything for our program. When you say general permits, that to me, most people means, well, I'm just getting a permit, so it must be a general permit. But it's really not, because the general permit is a totally different process, which was 62B 34, versus your individual and area-wide, which is up here, is 62B 33. And so while you can click here and it takes you to the actual application, so that was the CCCL, and you click right there, all of these are hyperlinked. You double click here and it actually takes you to the application. So that's the application. You can download it and then start filling it out, because all of these items are what's required to be submitted under 62B 33.008. Let's see here. I'm going back for a sec. Uh-oh. Boo, boo, boo. Okay.
You want to head back to the...
There we are. Okay, so here's the applications. If you go back, because if you notice in the description, and maybe I'll do this too, because then this screen is a little bit closer for me to read. But in the CCCL, it tells you the form on the left side of that. But then in the right section, it gives you a description of what that application is for. But even with that, like the 62B 33, it says applications for individual administrative permits and area-wide permits for construction and other activities, seaward of the CCCL, process pursuant to 62B 33. Well, that doesn't really give anybody any more idea about, well, what do I use this process or do I use another process? It just says that that's the process that you would need to use. Conversely, with the 62B 33, it does tell you that there is a permit fee worksheet for coastal construction control line applications, permit 73-100. And like I said, you know, having been there a while and starting to read some of this, I think some of it is not well written, because you would know that just looking at this statement that the application, well, it does say there's 73-100, but that kind of gets lost in the context, I think. But then you come down here and it says area-wide 73-100 application, and you have a permit fee worksheet. And oftentimes we get people that apply under the general permit, which is the next layer down, 73-101, and they'll include the permit fee worksheet, which is tailored for 73-100, which is a totally different application fee process for the 62B 34, which is the general permit, versus the CCCL administrative permitting process. But these are the forms that you would get to. There's also down here the emergency application, and people have gone to that because they think, well, okay, we had an emergency. And that's true, but the really weird thing now that we're 2 years out is that emergency applications are usually applied for within 30 days after a storm, because you're looking for some emergency relief to help prevent further destruction. So it's kind of not really you can't use it to rebuild houses. You can't use it. I mean, and again, as I said earlier, we do recognize and appreciate people trying to get back. But at the end of the day, the emergency process is not where and facilitates that ability for you to use that form for major things. It's really supposed to be for minor and repairs. And again, like I said, it's something that we would use right after a storm to help prevent further erosion, or to put some system in place so that you can come back later and do something else, but it's a temporary measure. So that's the emergency, like I said, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that, because there's not really much that really can benefit from that process. So have I thoroughly confused everybody so far? Good. See, it's called job security. I'm just kidding. Because look, I tell everybody, I don't need this kind of security, really, because, you know, we are, June 24th, so we're into a new hurricane season. So with every hurricane, we have increased workloads. So we have enough job security just because of nature. But anyway, so that's kind of the brief, like, wide scale, the control line. These are the processes. These are the forms we use. I'll kind of quickly tell you that 62B33, as you'll see on the application, I think I still have it open.
Go down to the Word file. You looking for the rule?
The PDF, the application, because I don't think I closed it out. I don't even see where the mouse is, sorry. Okay, I got it now. Nope. Okay. There it is. Okay, thank you. So the application, this is the application, and I was scrolling through 62B just to show you that it is available right there on our website. That's why I had it pulled up. So maybe I did jump too fast, but the rule here is accessible through the main page, right here in the quick links. And the quick links just literally helps you get to things much faster. The forms, the rules, the statutes, Map Direct, and like I said, the forms is probably the primary page. But as you see here at 62B33, and it comes up in Word version, so you have it where you can either click here and get the entire document that you can save on your device, or you can go to specific sections of the rule. Because this section 008 deals with the permitting requirements and what you have to submit in your application. So that it sometimes gives you more information than just the little blurb you'll get here on the application, going back to the application. So in this application, everybody see that okay, right? So in the application, you have these specific items, and to go through them, because all of them have to be completed. You have to have an owner with the information here, and I do know that and recognize that as agents, and some of you all as contractors, there may not be information that the owner wants to share, like their email address, their phone number. That's fine. The agent can put their information there twice. But we do have to have, thank you, we do have to have owner information completed. And you don't have to have an agent, but if you are having somebody that's working on your behalf, their information should be provided here. And I will say that I like to only have conversation with the people that are identified on the application. Why? Because I have learned over the years that when people start calling you contractors and whatever, just people, information gets mistranslated. I'll just say it that way. So it is better to only have the conversations with the owner and the agent, because then they're hearing it from you firsthand. And it's not like, well, somebody told me, you said, well, no, I've never even spoken with that person. And so we just want to make sure that it's not because we don't want to restrict the number of people, but I do kind of, because the more people I have to talk to, the more calls I have to make, the less work I'm able to get done. So at the end of the day, it's just better to be able to communicate with the owner and with the agent, but that has to be identified on the application. And again, an agent is not required, but if you are going to have an agent, that information should be here. Because when we send out documents, the documents are going to be addressed to the names that are located on this document. Sections 2 and 3 require signatures. Very plain and simple. If you're the owner or you're the agent, those have to be signed. Come here to the description. Yes, ma'am.
We're in a condominium,
Yes.
so as far as the ownership goes, is that like helping the board?
Yes.
For the person on the board?
Yes.
Helping that is tasked with this particular?
That is correct. That is correct. Because in a condominium, clearly, we don't want all the condominium
Yeah.
owners. It should be a condominium association. So thank you for that. That's a good question. So the description of activities, usually like it to be as comprehensive as you can make it. Well, let me not say that, because some people will go from one extreme to the other. They'll start itemizing everything. But basically speaking, we want like the things that you've captured on your permit fee worksheet. So you can say, I'm building a single-family residence, putting in a swimming pool, I'm putting in some ancillary structures, I'm doing landscaping, I'm doing exterior lighting. That's pretty, you know, you don't have to like driveway and walkway and, you know, just give us a comprehensive, because there is a box there that you can check if in fact you were going to provide an itemized sheet. You can check that box. And the only reason that, I mean, some people think we're being really anal sometimes, but the reason why I like people to put what they're doing, what they're requesting, is because should these things go to hearing, how many of you all have ever gone to hearing? Been in any kind of hearing, challenged by anything? They will pick at every little thing that you did not do that your rule says you're supposed to do. So if our rule says you're supposed to fill out an application, it should be filled out. Or there should be some, you know, pretty good explanation why you were not able to fill it out. So there should be a pretty comprehensive description of what's being proposed. And if not written here, or you have really large handwriting, or you want to use a large font, and like I always said, our eyesight, but if you do that and you just can't fit it all in there, just check the box and give us another sheet or another page that clearly explains what's happening.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
but really how descriptive, we're building a single-family house. It has to be whatever, 16 feet off the ground. How much description do you really need?
That's it, a single-family dwelling.
That's pretty simple.
It is.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have to say there's parking underneath or,
No,
okay,
no. Because generally speaking, if your parking is underneath, it's captured within the footprint of that dwelling, right? So as far as the fees are concerned, you would have to pay for like a driveway, because the driveway is a separate structure. Because under 33, you have to pay for all the structures, which is what the fee worksheet identifies. But you have to, all structures are associated with a fee. And again, not to jump ahead, but we can jump ahead if we want to go there. But in the fee worksheet, it does show you, well, yeah, let me do that because that'll help. I guess I'm getting pretty good at this here. All right, so, thank you. So here, as you can see on the fee worksheet, it says habitable structures, and it identifies single family, it identifies non-habitable major structures, and it has a brief description on your fee worksheet, what those things are. But really, to get the comprehensive discussion of all of this, that's why even in the application, to go back here just for a quick second, that's why you always see a reference when you get to these items that references what's in the rule. So if you needed more explanation, or I wanted to go somewhere else to look, that's why the reference for that item is included in that rule citation, so you can go and see more information. So back to the fee worksheet. So you have single-family residence, and the only distinction with the single-family residence is whether it has a footprint of greater than 2,400 square feet or less than 2,400 square feet. And that's what dictates how much of a fee is assessed with each of those items. Non-habitable major structures, and it has some things identified. And also too, in 62B 33.002, that's our definitions. Those definitions also give support and context to what these things are in the rule. Major structures, non-habitable major, it's all defined. To tells you then some examples of each of those categories. But those things have fees associated with them as well. Then you come down to multiple family dwellings. And that's where you get into whether it's a condominium. And even though it doesn't say, townhouses are considered multifamily. Why? Because there's 2 people living in that structure. So it's still considered a multifamily dwelling, even if it's a townhouse or a triplex or a duplex. It still has to be captured under the fees of a multifamily dwelling. Everybody good so far?
Go back to my question. As you and I talked about it before, we're in the general permit area,
Right,
which doesn't apply to this fee structure
that's right,
at all.
that's right.
But you said you got to go to the rules for 60
Okay,
something.
okay.
34,
If everybody lets me pause for a second, I'll go, because that's a whole nother discussion, but I'll go there because you asked.
Finish
Okay.
this and then,
Yeah, because 62B34 has its own rule associated with it. So that's, it'll show you in that rule how the fee is calculated. Because there is no fee worksheet, it just specifically says your rules identified in 34 under .040 are these. And it just calls out what your fees are. And that's, again, the whole benefit of having the general permit. So moving further now, you have your minor structures. Because if it's a single minor structure, and minor structures, again, by definition, it tells you what they are. Just from a cursory, minor structures are those that are designed to be expendable. And so, and are such a size and design not to cause a measurable interference. That's what the definition says a minor structure is. So if you're putting in a driveway, you're putting in stairs, you're putting in a dune walkover. Now, let me pause there. Usually, anything you include on your plans has to be captured in a fee, whether it's a single minor structure or it's multiple minor structures, or if it's a non-habitable major, like you've got a cabana or you've got a beach house or you've got, all of that is spelled out how you would apply a fee. Dune walkovers do not cost you if you get a field permit. I was hoping Kelly Kramer, our field representative, was going to be able to make it today, because she can give you a field permit for a dune walkover. She can give you a field permit for a lot of things that are minor. So sometimes people will only apply for the major structure, their residence. Because, well, why not? Because you can save money and get the other things authorized through a field permit, which costs you nothing. It's just you would have to reach out to our field representative and get them authorized that way. And so it's a good and it's bad, but if you put it on the plans, you have to pay for it. I mean, that's just the way it goes. You have to pay for whatever you submit in your application process to us. But yes, ma'am.
In our case, we're just trying to replace exactly what was there before.
Mm-hmm.
In our case,
It's
we
not
have a
on.
condo building. Anyway,
He said, pass the button. I mean, they just want to be able to hear you on, because they can't hear you.
in our case. It- Could I just ask the question?
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
Okay. In our case, we're trying to rebuild our, we're in a condominium building.
Yes.
And we're just trying to build our swimming pool back the same way it was before the storm. But because it's toward the front of our complex, the line goes through the swimming pool. We also had a pool house. And we're just rebuilding the pool house as well. So does this minor structure and activities fall, would that be the pool
No.
house? I'm just very confused.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I mean, that's what this forum is for. Is to give some clarity so you guys can I'm helping you help me is what I'm here for, because I figure if I do this, then we'll get some applications coming in that I won't have to keep writing REIs, which are requests for additional information, people won't be submitting on the wrong form and they have to call you, say, hey, look, you submitted the wrong form, you need to withdraw and resubmit, because I hate to do that, right? But it is what it is. But if you look there under number 3 for non-habitable major structures, under the examples, it actually calls out swimming pools. It doesn't really say pool houses, but pool houses, cabanas, and gazebos kind of all come up under the same classification. Now, I will say this, unless your pool house is actually like a residence, but if it's really a pool house, it's just,
Little tiny brick building.
then it would fall under the non-habitable. So you would have 2 non-habitable major structures, the swimming pool and the pool house, each being $1,000, so that would be $2,000. And now just to piggyback, because you got the mic and you asked the question, you said the line goes through your pool. Which line?
1978.
Okay, so that's the setback line. Okay, all right.
Interesting. We're in the exact same, I don't think everybody will probably be able to hear me. I talk loud.
Well, it's for the people on the,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's the reason why they really want you to be mic'd.
We're in the exact same situation where our pool is actually on the 1978 CCCL line, and the company we hired to reconstruct our pool contacted the town to get their permit, and the town told them that we needed a survey showing the 1978 CCCL line running through our pool. Now, we found it interesting that we found documents online showing the 1978 CCCL line running through our pool, right down the center of our pool, which was put together by the people who did the berm survey. So there was already a document showing that, but the town still requires us to go and pay the money to a third-party surveyor to get that. And of course, that's weeks and wastes a lot of time. Now I'm starting to think that when that's done, the town's going to come back to us again and say, oh, now you got to contact DEP on top of that.
Well, and they will.
Which,
So now
why
you
didn't
know.
they tell us that right at the very, very beginning so we can do this on a simultaneous process? It doesn't make sense to have 6 different steps all lined up when in the very beginning we can get told, you'll need to also do this and you'll need to also do this. Because in talking to our pool company that's going to rebuild our pool, they had indicated at the very beginning when we established a pool committee and brought in several contractors and had them give us quotes on rebuilding our pool, and they implied that we could put the equipment. We had the same thing, like a little house right next to the pool, which was the way it was done in the 70s, and that little house was where the pool equipment was. That's all it was. You couldn't even store anything in it because there was a pool pump in there, a pool filter was in there, and then this thing where the water goes up to the same level of the pool.
Right.
Well, that was damaged by Hurricane Ian to the point where the pool contractor said, we can't rebuild that. And that's not how things are done today. They use what's called a vac pack system or some type of a system that they set in. You go over to Diamond Head, you go to Ernie. That's what they're doing. That's what they put in. And I'm starting to get the impression that we can't put that anywhere else. And our pool contractor didn't know that. And I certainly didn't know that in addition to going to the town for a permit for rebuilding our pool, we would need to go to you and pay these fees to rebuild our pool. Nor did our pool contractor know that, which is kind of surprising to me because they did Diamond Head's pool, right? So you think they'd know. They're doing Surf Song's pool, so you think they'd know. But so we're in this thing, and it's like, very hard to understand.
Right.
What really do we all need? We understand now we need to survey, right? Even though we don't understand why we really need a survey, because town's already got that. It's on file. You can bring it up, and it shows the 78 CCL going right through our pool. But we still have to go and hire a contract or a surveyor to do that.
Right.
And if we're going to find out after the fact, once we get that done, they say, oh, by the way, now you have to apply to DEP just to rebuild an existing pool that was already there, the exact same situation. It just seems odd to me that
Right.
the process is not, that process should be more clearly defined for us. We're just trying to get our complex back. It's been
Right.
2 years and the whole thing has just been a nightmare.
Right.
And it's because of not understanding, but none of us have gone through that. I don't know who else has gone through a major hurricane like this before. Probably nobody. I'm on the board, and none of the other board members really understood any of this either.
Right.
And the assistance that we're getting is not clear. I would have liked, when I first came in here and sat down and talked to the people at the town, them to tell me, you've got to do this, and then you're going to have to apply to DEP. Now, you can speed up the process by doing that now, too. Do
Right.
both of them right away,
Right.
because ultimately you're going to need to do that. Pay the fees,
Right.
because then we have to have a board meeting, and then we have to approve spending the money on it, and it's like, we already had a board meeting to approve spending the other money. We could have done that at the same time,
Right,
right? So it's,
right.
that's my input on it anyway.
Right. And I would just say that I understand your frustration, and that's why I'm here, because it's frustrating for me as somebody administering a program, when I recognize that a lot of the inadequacies is because people are totally ignorant of the process. I mean, most people didn't know, like you just articulated, don't even know there's a control line running through their property or that their seaward of a control. They never heard of it. And the only reason they heard of it is because there was a storm. And now I'm trying to do something and I just found out, wait, there's a CCCL. And so, for that, I apologize that there's not enough information out there for people to know right off the bat, which is why I'm showing you the tools that we have for people to become aware. That still won't answer all your questions, and it never will, but at least it gives you a starting point and hopefully a better starting point. And not only is it a better starting point, all of our information is on there, because I'm the administrator, but I won't be the permit manager for long. We've hired two new people. I mean, I had a new person start on Friday and had to abandon them to be here this week, but we are trying to get people up and running because I'm the administrator, not the permit manager. But right now, I'm actually, because I have 2 vacancies, am managing 7 counties and being an administrator too. So it's been a lot for me. And so, it's just one of those balancing acts that you have. And that's why I'm quick to look at things when they first come in the door, because if I can say this is one less or this is one, that it helps to cut down on frustration, because there's a 30-day review window, which I haven't even gotten to, but there's a 30-day review window. And so you don't want people finding out later in the process, because it just adds to the frustration. Now, I will say that, just to not dwell here too long, but the reason for surveys is because there are a lot of other nuances that go along with building swimming pools and just building in general, but definitely building swimming pools that come into play about why you need a survey. Yes, I understand we could look at an aerial, and the aerial can clearly tell us where your pool was.
When you stand up, it's like, oh, there's a pool right
Okay,
there.
okay. But at the end of the day, the reason for the survey is because we have to be able to say, and this is one of the things that I wanted to get to, just even going through the application process, is the survey has to be a recent survey. Why? Because we have to be able to measure those things that the rule says, because we have all of these other criteria that run in the background. And one of them is the 30-year erosion projection. And you need the mean high and the seasonal high contours shown on your survey. Now, if you have a survey, especially if you're rebuilding a pool in the footprint of the pool, we try to give people a bit of a pass as to whether or not that survey, but I don't know how long your condo has been in existence. If you don't have a survey that's not within at least like the last 2 years or so, we just say that's just way too old. Because if it's a survey that was conducted back in like 1980, well, yeah, that's not going to be very beneficial, because it's not even going to represent what the area looks like now. And we know that because it's been a storm. But we try to give some waiver, because there are some things we can waive, and where we can waive things that we're not putting ourselves in a liability issue, we're doing so. Yes, sir.
The idea of running these applications concurrently sounds good in theory, but isn't he going to need the approval for his DEP consistency letter before he even applies to DEP?
But my understanding, and Chad, you can chime in, but my understanding is that yes, one of the application requirements, and since you said it, I'll go back here, is right here, number 7. Written evidence provided by the local appropriate government that has jurisdiction over that activity. So that means, but it says the thing is that does not contravene local setback and zoning requirements. So that's different than a building permit. It's just a site plan review process that's usually handled by the planning department.
Yeah, correct. So that's two separate applications. The building permit will be separate from the application for this letter of concurrence with our zoning policies. Does that make sense?
And that's
Well,
a
it
zoning.
does, but to get zoning to sign off on this consistency letter, you're gonna have a pretty good set of plans for the current survey. So it sounds good in theory that you can do this concurrently, but at the end of the day, if you don't have this approval from Fort Myers Beach, your DEP permit isn't gonna go. So you could end up with a DEP conditional approval, but then never get the city of Fort Myers consistency.
So, in our situation, and obviously it's probably going to be their situation as well, our pool contractor has written up a plan.
Our pool contractor has written up a plan, which he submitted to the town. The town rejected the permit request, and the permit was because we didn't have a survey that showed the 1978 CCCL, and they wanted better clarification on the location of the shower, the foot washes, where the new filtration system was going to be. And if he does that, what you're saying is that the DEP will say, unless that comes from the town, then, and is, or is, we show it's been approved by the town, they'll just sit on it, because as it says right there, written evidence but from the town that we need that. So if, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't even proceed forward with this process until we finish the other process first. And then how long does this process actually take? That's a question for you. So, Laura,
Well,
Laura.
it literally depends on how complete the application is. And again, you're right. Now you're going to say, well, we're in a catch-22. Absolutely. Because if you don't have that local approval letter, these items that are on this fee worksheet, I mean, not fee worksheet, but the application form, those items have to be either addressed by saying they're attached and included or waiver requested. But you have to have, and as you notice, those first three items, there is no waiver. You can't get a waiver for the local approval. You can't get a waiver for the fee. You can't get a waiver for evidence of ownership. So those things at a minimum have to be provided in order to say that you have a complete application. Otherwise, the rest of those things, we will write you a request for additional information letter. And in it, we note these are the things that you haven't provided, or these are the things you have provided, but they're yet lacking information that's spelled out in 62B33, the rule. If we don't have to write you a letter, because statutorily, which we're driven by Chapter 161, that's our Florida statute, which is the law, we have 30 days to review a new application to see if that application is satisfactory. If not, we write a request for additional information letter. If it's okay, then guess what? Your application is deemed complete upon arrival, not when somebody looks at it, but upon arrival. When we have a completed application, we have 90 days to issue a permit. So theoretically, if you had a complete application walking in the door, you get your permit in 90 days. It could be before then, because we do have a contractor that's coming in and trying to help with all of this, because not only is it the Lee County and the uptake of applications that are starting to come in, but Volusia County got hit really bad too, because they got hit by Ian, not clearly as worse as you all did, and then they lost a lot of their coastal armoring structures, their bulkheads and their seawalls. But then Nicole came 6 weeks later and did knock down half the ones that were even damaged after Ian. And so as a result, that area, Volusia County and Flagler County, our last I heard, because I kind of got out of that, is 800 applications for just that one area. So we've hired a contractor, because that's a lot of applications to review. And unfortunately, with every storm, here's a thought, tell legislator, every time you have a major hurricane, it should equate to additional positions in the control line program, because we don't have the staff to manage those kind of things. But that's why they do allow us to hire contractors. So we have a contractor that comes in and he tries to get things done rather quickly in terms of permitting. So it may not take the 90 days. But I only said that to say it's a 90-day process once we have a completed application. If there is this, like you all were just talking about, the survey and not having the local written authorization, if you don't have that and we have to wait for that to come in, well, you don't have a completed application until we get that. So how long that time span is, I can't say. I don't know how long that would take, but it is something that is to be considered in terms of your timing. And once we get a completed application, we're trying to do our darndest to get it done as soon as we possibly can in that 90-day and not later in that 90-day window. Yes.
You know, you mentioned about the survey, and we had a survey done 8 months ago, thinking things would move along, you know, and within 2 months or so of the survey, it would be in a process, you know, to get our approvals. Well, it's been 8 months now, and by your regulation, your rule, it says if it's 6 months, if it's older than 6 months, then you have to get a whole new survey. And you just mentioned a while ago, well, if it's 2 years out, we might accept it. So which way is it?
Well, I mean, yes, it is required by rule. I mean, it says it right there in item number 10, that if you're providing 8, that you provide a survey. That survey has to be conducted from a field date not more than 6 months from when you submit the application. But we understand that resources are limited. We're just trying to work with what we have, but yet do it in a way that we don't put the department in some liable issue, because we can document why we didn't accept something or why we did say it was acceptable, even if it did this. I think as we were talking, if you're landward, as far landward past the Estero Boulevard, I mean, I'm not going to make somebody spend money to go get a survey just for the sake of but I can justify that. I can have some documentation that if we were ever called on question, had to be audited. I mean, because all of these things go on. Who cares if you're trying to get back to life, right? But we have to do these things because as a regulatory entity, we have to be aware that audits are conducted, people may challenge. So we have to do things according to what the rule says. And so, yes, we can document and show that this is the reason why this was accepted or this was not accepted in that case if we're doing something that exceeds that. But yes, now I will say this. What I'm seeing a lot of the surveys is not so much whether it's a 6-month issue or not. It's the surveys, because to me, if they conducted the survey right after the storm, so at least I see how, because the sandy beach has not changed much. I mean, there's not been that much accretion. There's no formation of dunes that quickly. So if you did a survey early into 2023, so that was after the storm, I will accept that. But the problem I'm having is that people don't get the information on the survey that they're required to get on the survey. So I have to write an REI saying, well, you don't have all the information on the survey. And particularly the seasonal high, the mean high, the erosion control line. Those are non-negotiables. If I have a survey and it does, and the CCCL, believe it or not. I've had people submit surveys and they don't even have the CCCL on there. Well, how do I really know you're within my jurisdiction? I could be making this up.
Well, a question to that. If, for example, I got a survey, we're back one lot off of the, we're landward of the blue line.
General permit line.
Okay. But, and so we have nothing to do with dunes. There's a property in front of us.
Right.
Okay. But when we have the survey done, they don't generally put the CCCL line or the general, permit line or how far from the mean water you are. That's usually not on a survey. They're just surveying, here's your boundaries.
And that's the difference.
So that means you got to go to a surveyor and have them redraw something that totally encompasses the area around you, they got to survey all of that, which to me is, because it shows, just like this gentleman said, it shows on the map you even sent me, which I really appreciate. And I appreciate you being here. I mean, I wish this was done a year and a half ago.
Right.
It would have helped a lot of people with a lot of time.
Right.
But, you know, just like he said, I can look at that print and it shows exactly my property. It shows exactly where the water, low water, high water, whatever you call it. It shows the various triple CL lines right on that map. And then my property survey says, here's the property that's designated, and here's their survey. It gives an elevation, you know, and it gives the boundaries, but it fits within that whole bigger, you know, map that has been done after, as well as my survey's been done after, long after the storm. So it's like, I don't understand the duplication, why that wouldn't be waived, or I guess what you're telling me is I got to go get a survey and he's got to survey the entire area.
Well, again, it's not the entire area, but again, we have the provisions of what is required for a suitable survey. It's in rule. You know, that's why I'm here, to try to give some education. I mean, you know, surveyors, anybody here who's a surveyor? Okay, so we're missing the people that really could benefit from this conversation, because they're the ones that need to know that there are requirements for surveying. But at the end of the day, it's the property owner's responsibility, because we don't go after the surveyor. We go to the property owner. Why? Because it's your property, not the surveyor. And I mean, and I'm not saying that they're not to be held liable, because when somebody puts their sign and seal and you're paying them for a service, you expect them to provide you the level of service that you've paid for. But at the end of the day, we're an organization that has to be able to uphold our rules and regulations. And so if, again, I will not accept a survey that doesn't show the control line. I can't. It has to show the coastal construction control line, as well as your property boundaries relative to that control line.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is this isn't really a survey. When you buy a house, you have to have a survey. Okay? They survey your property.
Yeah, it's a property boundary survey.
They don't, but that's what it generally a survey is. So you're saying there has to be almost, call it something different, a coastal survey that includes your property and 3 or 4 other factors that are not normally, you know, based on a survey. When you tell somebody, I need a survey, they come out and they survey your property. They don't survey the rest of the neighborhood to show where all the coastal lines are.
Yeah, so what I want to show you, Jacob, can you expand this a little bit for me?
I understand the rule. It's just, you're like telling everybody, nobody's going to be accepted. There's nobody, when you say a survey, I can send a survey I had done yesterday, okay? But then I have to do something separate. I have to tell the surveyor, this isn't a normal survey of my property. I need these 3 or 4 other components in this survey. And now we're getting into, nobody has that survey.
I have a question kind of related to that. I have our survey pulled up. It's tiny on my phone, but I found those 4 things that you mentioned. But the problem is it was 3 years old this month. Is there some place, so I'm concerned about the age of ours. Is there some place where we could, you know, email and say, is this going to be accepted, or do we have to get another one? The town has said it's okay for what we have to do here for the zoning and that kind of stuff. But I don't want to get to some point and then say, okay, now it's not good enough. Now you have to wait on a new survey.
Right.
So is there some place we could, a contact we could send it to and have them look at it and review it and say yes or no, we'll take that or not?
well, because this is a forum that includes everybody, I'll take a look at it when we get finished, if you're able to be around, or that's what I plan to do for Tuesday and Wednesday, is be here to talk to people one-on-one about their
Okay. specific
specific project or specific questions that they may have, but I can take a look at it just to see. But at the end of the day, it's the survey requirements, and the survey requirements, as I was getting ready to show here, .0081. And it's a topographic survey, and I get that. It's a little different than the boundary survey that a typical house has, but you live in an untypical area. So unfortunately, when you live there, you have to give us what we have to have in terms of being able to make sure that we have done our due diligence to uphold the rule and statute that we have before us. And that's why the topographic survey is required. Like I said, that kind of is not really a moot point, but it is a point, because at the end of the day, we know there's no vegetation, we know there's no dune features, it's just all sandy beach. But still, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that even what you're doing is not somehow violating our criteria, which I hadn't even gotten into, but the criteria for permitting, .005, that's the things that we have to be able to check the list to say, you either get a permit or you don't get a permit.
I think part of the frustration you're having is that a typical boundary survey that you would get for $700 is not going to come near providing the information that you need to fill out the plans that need to go to DEP. It's a
Well, that's
much,
what you just said.
yeah, it's considerably different. It's the difference between a $700 survey and a $1,500 or $2,000 survey.
While we're talking, that survey requirement be open?
I can't. I think I can.
Word file, if you go down, if you go into the Word file, that.
I can't see from here. Am I on it?
To the left, look to the left, Mr. Laura. Look to the left.
Oh, okay. Didn't even think about that, sir. Thank you. So the thing about when you click on these things and you go just to a specific section, it tells you when the last times these sections were revised. So it tells you over here what it is, the description, the date it was last revised. But otherwise, you just click here and it opens up that particular criteria associated with what you've selected. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So these are the survey requirements. And again, as I've indicated, we do try to, under the circumstances, waive some of these items as we can. But at the end of the day, we have to have something that we can defend. So we have to make sure that, for the most part, I mean, and like I said, to me, it's a non-negotiable, because how can I stand in court and defend something and say, oh yeah, it's zero to the control line, and I don't know that? I mean, and it's just, it's our governmental system, but then again, I'm trying to use a practical approach at the same time, but I still have to make sure that the things that we have to say we have, so that there's no way to defend, why did you get a survey and it didn't have the control line? Yes, sir.
Thanks for your time, Ms. Jackson.
No, absolutely.
This is a very complicated topic, and I've been dealing with it for the last couple of years, trying to figure it out. I understand the rationale for all the information that you're looking for on that survey, but in some cases, we're having problems locating like the 1978 CCCL line. Even though that's not under your jurisdiction, that's a town of Fort Myers Beach issue, that's still the setback, so we can't go any further back than that line, and you're requiring that we show that on the survey. 'Cause-
No. maybe locally they do, but we don't.
Yeah, correct. So again, Ms. Solore's jurisdiction at the 1991 CCCL, the 1978 for the town's requirements is just a local zoning line.
Because we can't go beyond that line.
For the setback. So maybe you're the wrong person to ask, but we've got to find that line. And I'm currently dealing with one right now where I have two different survey companies and they're coming up with two different answers. And we're trying to find out where that is. Get with you on that? Okay. All right. But we understand the reason why you want all this different information. And it is very daunting, all the things that you want on that survey. But I know when it comes to the 91 line, you want us to know exactly where we are in location of that line because that's your jurisdiction. And then once the foundation goes in, we actually need to verify that we're on that point that we gave you, that we haven't exceeded that. So we understand it's very complicated. But I'll get
Yes.
you on that.
Thank you. So again, to the survey point, and maybe we can move on. I try to, as much as I possibly can, like I said, give a practical context to what's required. I mean, first of all, I understand that we're not going to send somebody out to spend money just for one or two items. But if it's something that I have to be able to justify, and there are just some things, like I said, the seasonal high, the mean high, the control line, I have to have those. Why? Because I have to make sure that the 30-year erosion projection is accounted for, because that's a statute, right? That's a law. So I have to be able to make sure that I have, I mean, nobody likes to, I mean, I just drove down yesterday from Tallahassee, and I mean, I don't want to get a ticket, right? So you got to do what the law says. If it says drive 70, 75, whatever, you want to do that. So same with us with our application. I have certain things that I have to make sure there is a non-negotiable because it's a law. And the law says that there are certain things that can't be built seaward of the 30-year erosion projection. And literally that's the main reason why the mean high and the seasonal high have to be provided, so that we can then make sure that we can check that and say that statutorily we meet that, and this permit will be issued in good intention of supporting that statute. Okay, any more questions about this survey? And I mean, we'll stay here as long as we need to. Well, not here as long as we need to, but on this point. But I just want to make sure that everybody has what they need to kind of move forward. Because again, some of the other things, and again, the reason why I wanted to kind of go through this kind of like as a piecemeal, but showing it in great details, because these are the things that I'm seeing that are almost like unstoppable points in terms of the REA, getting REIs, requests for additional information, or just rejecting some things. And then the site plan is another one. So the site plan requirements are the same. It has specifics in the site plan. So again, if you go back to the application, let's see. So, all right, what's the fee worksheet? So here, the application. So we've talked about the survey in great lengths. The next item would be the lighting plans. So if you're doing exterior lighting, there needs to be some designation about your lighting. Then the item after that, the dimension site plan signed and sealed by a registered professional. And again, these citations that are included in the application are because that doesn't give you a whole lot of context on this application, but you can turn to that citation in the rule. And if you turn to that citation in the rule, it gives you great detail about what we mean by having to provide a dimension site plan signed and sealed. So some of the things that are not being provided on the site plan, which and to your point, sir, about why we asked for the CCCL or why we think the CCCL should be shown, because most people who get plans prepared, they use the survey as the base layer to put everything else on, because the survey shows what's existing. And I understand in most of the cases, there's nothing existing, and that's fine. But the survey should show what's existing. The site plan should show what's proposed. So the first key word is dimension. I don't know, people don't seem, or they just get right across that. But one of the first items, if you go to the rule, here. Okay. All right, so here. Can we expand that a little bit? Yeah, just the sheet on the right, if we can. Thank you. So here, it says here, a dimension site plan. The drawing shall be signed and sealed by a registered professional. The site plan shall include the location and exterior dimensions of all proposed structures. And then skip through and it says with the distances shown from the CCCL. So that's the reason why if you have a survey that has a CCCL, it makes it fairly simple for you to put together a site plan, because the site plan already has it. Because you just lay on that survey what you're planning to do. It makes it easier for me, and it's a requirement by rule, if you put everything on the site plan. And one thing I've noticed is there are multiple sets of plans that I've seen. One person will have an architect's plan, then they'll have the person who's the agent with their plans, and sometimes the information is conflicting. So that brings about inconsistencies, because then I'm like, okay, well, whose plans should I believe? What information should I take from what plan? And then that requires sometimes a request for additional information letter, because I have to go back and say, well, why do I have this? Why do we have conflicting information, and which one is really what I'm supposed to be using to write up the permit? So exterior dimensions that are required on a site plan makes it easier for me that I don't have to flip between this plan, this sheet, especially when it's a requirement. So dimensions, again, overall length, overall width of all the proposed structures. So if you've got a house, you've got a pool, show the dimensions. It just makes it a lot simpler. We can get it processed faster. There are other items here that are required on the site plan, but the biggest of those for me is the dimensions. You know, the vegetation, the location of the outlines of adjacent properties. I mean, clearly, most adjacent properties are vacant, so there's no real issue to have that shown on your site plan. Again, the mean high and seasonal high, they're called out. Why? Because, again, we have to be able to verify that these proposed structures don't have a statutory impact called the 30-year erosion projection. And that's the reason why those things are provided. Because sure, we can have it on the survey, but again, if there's nothing on your site, how do I verify? Because sometimes the plans are not measurable. But we do everything we can to try to make things work. Because again, we're not trying to make this process any more cumbersome than it is. But at the end of the day, if it's not giving me the information for me to even try to extract the information, that's what makes it a challenge. That's what makes it a challenge. So those are the questions. Yes.
So let's say, because everybody in this room needs to have a survey, topographical survey.
Yes.
So let's say we get the survey.
Yes.
I'm looking at all the requirements for the drawings, and it has to be measured and whatnot. Can we just use that survey, say we like zoom in on it, we print it, we write in where our lights are, where our, the things that we're wanting to do that would not necessarily be on the survey? Would that suffice for you? Or do we need to have our electrician put a separate plan together that's layered on top of this? And like, how many different, are you saying you want like the survey and then you want multiple pages underneath that?
Yes,
Layering from so lighting, because we did obviously
Yes.
need pool lighting, but then
Yes.
of course we're on the beach, so it has to be turtle lighting.
yes,
And
yes.
so can you explain that process and practically what we need to do
Yes.
for that?
Yes. And that is true because most surveyors are not going to want to sign and seal somebody's electrical lighting plan. I mean, that's just why they're a surveyor. They have no understanding of that. So yes, you do need to have, and to your point, if I think I remember hearing you correctly at the initiation, you have a condominium. So unfortunately, with condominiums, lighting is not reviewed by us in terms of the CCCL program staff members. We send those out and coordinate with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And it's because when it's condominiums, as what was said to me years ago, and I've been saying, hey, we need to revisit this because is this really happening? Because if it's not really happening, we just need to stop it, you know? But my understanding is that condominiums generally have to apply for district authorizations because of them being condominiums and having certain size and capacities on their property. So there was a alliance formed years ago such that FWC, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, so you know, but FWC was supposed to review those application contents so that there was not duplicative review. Somebody wasn't submitting to the district was utilizing the Florida Fish and Wildlife staff in Tallahassee, and then we'd send them something so there would be 2 reviews for the same activity. I don't know if that's still the case, but until somebody says that that's not what we're supposed to do, when you have a condominium, your lighting plans get submitted to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation for their review and comments. They're not a regulatory agency, they're a commenting agency. So everything that happens to them is through us. So you submit it to us. Now, we won't say you can't ever reach out to them and try to get a response ahead of time, because we're in the process of looking at our rule, and that might be something that we change our rule to say, is that you got to have a prior approved lighting plan with FWC, just so that way it gets out of the way, and that's not a stickler to keeping people from moving forward in our process in terms of getting permits.
Okay, so for practical purposes, we get the survey, we send you the lighting plan, and then you send that portion of our application to wildlife.
Well, we send the whole thing, but yes.
Okay.
Well, they have to look at, believe it or not, they will look at everything in terms of how they have questions as it relates to turtles. But they look at the contents of all of the records, but their primary responsibility is to look at the lighting and see how that lighting may or may not impact marine turtles in their nesting habitat.
So in your experience, how long does that take?
A long time.
What's a long time?
And of course it's broadcast, so I'm trying to be very, very guarded, but at the end of the day, it does take a while.
6 months, a year, how long?
I have no idea. I really don't, because sometimes they ask for information, and I'll say this because I'll go on record as saying this because I say it all the time. I tell people, submit the lighting requirements because you have to. If it gets to a point where your lighting contractor can't come to terms with FWC, then withdraw the lighting and you get a permit, but you won't be able to install the lights until you can come back and get things worked out. But at least that gets you started with building the structure. That's my practical approach, because I think it sometimes gets to the point where at one point FWC had a high turnover. And with their high turnover, you'd have one person that would start out reviewing it, they'd be gone, somebody else picks it up. You got a whole nother set of asks that were different than the original asks that you had. And so it can be a bit frustrating. It's frustrating on my end because I'm just trying to get people moving in getting their structures back up. But on the other vein, one of our rule requirements is to make sure that we're not doing something that's going to have a significant adverse impact on marine turtles and their nesting habitat. So it's kind of like I'm in a catch-22 because I have to. That's why I said we're going to revisit whether or not that becomes something that we really need to do, that we need to continue to do, because
Okay.
right now that is what we do.
So the 90 days to issue the permit includes the wildlife submission. So let's say we submitted our application to you July 1st. 90 days from there.
That's a
would
completed
also have-
application.
Okay, let's just assume best case scenario. We have everything, we submit it July 1st. 90 days from there, we can expect an issued permit from you that includes approval of the lighting plan.
No, I cannot say that because I cannot speak to whether they will give you approval that quickly. I cannot. Because, I mean, just being 100% candid, I have never seen a lighting plan come in that the day it comes in, they don't ask for more information. And it's just, that's where we are with the Florida Fish and Wildlife. And I'm not trying to say that I don't like turtles. I mean, I think everybody loves a turtle, right? Absolutely adorable. But at the end of the day, we have to rely on them to provide us their recommendations. When it comes to these swimming pools and things like that, like I said, I'm the administrator. I'm going to talk to the program administrator and see if we can just try to cut the chase for some of these things, because you're taking people through the mill when they're just trying to rebuild a pool that they had previously.
Yes. Exactly.
But right now, that's just the way.
It's already there.
Right,
Or it's already there.
right.
It's just filled with scummy water.
We'll talk.
We just need-
We'll talk.
Are you gonna have appointments for the next 2 days?
I don't know if it's appointments, Chad, is it, or just walk-ins?
Yeah, so Ms. Jackson will be here for Tuesday and Wednesday, just kind of a walk-in, first come, first serve, rather than trying to deal with appointments and scheduling.
Yes, sir.
We have a project in Sunnyvale,
Yes,
and we have some issues with the lighting.
yes.
So did I hear you correct when you said that we could drop that in order to get the permit, and then we can come back after we, under construction and work that out?
Yes.
Okay, I don't,
Yes, I hate that it has to come to that sometimes, but I just tell people, rather than continue to get requests for additional information on their staff and more information, or we call you complete, because as you'll see here in our rule requirements, it literally says, for structures with proposed permanent exterior lighting, a dimension marine turtle lighting plan that includes all exterior lightings drawn to an appropriate scale. You submit that, really, from the DEP's perspective, you should be considered complete. Because it didn't say, well, what if somebody doesn't like what you've got? It doesn't say that. It says it shall include these. Now, if you give us a table that matches us, that, and it has all that, technically, that's a completed item.
yeah, but Florida Wild.
Oh, I know. Trust me. You're preaching to the choir. And I.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I definitely understand. Yes, ma'am.
Is that the same with landscaping?
Yes.
With landscaping, you're requiring both the scientific name and the common name. And is that a thing that you could let lapse
Yes.
and go back and
Yes. Well,
review?
if it's just landscaping only, or are you talking
Yes.
about landscaping with lighting?
Probably individually makes more sense, huh?
So when it's landscape with lighting, that's when you get into the whole, and again, I preface all of that and say all of that is just a multifamily dwelling or a commercial structure is when FWC has to get involved. But if it's for a private residence, and I think you, sir, said it was a condominium.
It's a pool
So-
house.
So that
It's a pool house that no one lives in.
would get you into the same category of FWC having to be the person that does the review.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
But you don't have to do it if it's a single resident.
No, We still have lighting reviews, because again, that is part of our responsibility, is to make sure that the lighting is compliant. But it's only the way that we have managed things for the 25 years that I've been there, that if it's a multifamily or a commercial structure, it goes to the Florida Fish Wildlife Conservation for their recommendations.
So for a single family dwelling, I don't have to show, if I'm not going to have any, splashy lights showing up in trees and all over, I'm not going to have any, I don't have to show anything.
Well, it does say that for structures with proposed permanent exterior lighting. So that doesn't say whether it's multifamily, and again, our attorneys will be the first to probably chime in and say, well, you're getting yourself in trouble, because it doesn't even say what kind of structures. It just says for structures with proposed permanent exterior lighting. So that means whatever structure you have, if you're proposing exterior lights, you have to provide lighting accordance with what the rule says.
So if I have no exterior light,
Then you just come back here to the application. Where am I now? It's okay, you making me have to change too fast. So you go back here to the application, and on the application page where, here it is here. That's the fee worksheet, so it's here. Nope. There. So here under number 9, up at the top, says attached or included, or says waiver requested. So you could click here for structures, check the box for waiver requested, come down here and say number 9, no exterior lighting proposed. That's it.
okay.
That's it. So again, that's site plan, because that's where we started all this. Number 10, number 11, grading plan. The grading plan is something that shows your excavation. What are you cutting and filling? And then supported by that is number 12, which is the cross section. So the cross section shows you from the control line to the mean high water, and it gives you, like, sometimes people will do it in a very central location across the site, but it really doesn't give me the benefit of the information that we're looking for, which is if you're putting a pool, that cross section should go through the pool, because it gives me a perspective of from the control line to the mean high, what does that site look like, what the structures are, and if there is a pool, it shows like a slice through the pool so you could see top and bottom. And it actually says that it should be referenced, because again, that's just the application, but to actually see what's described in there, you would come here to the rule and nope. Yeah, down here. So yeah. Right here. So where it says grading plan, a dimension grading plan, existing and proposed elevations, proposed excavation and fill. And then, of course, it talks about for multifamilies, if you're doing significant excavation, there's a lot more information that's required for multifamilies. Because again, when I was the permit manager, I processed applications in Dade County. I know this is Lee and things are different over here on the west side of the state. But the reason why we had to break things out is because when you've got multifamilies down there means multifamilies. I mean, I was permitting 50-story, 271 unit condominiums all the time. And most of those structures had upwards of 50,000 cubic yards of excavation, because they would have to put in these gigantic, well, first of all, it's because they're trying to maximize their profit for the amount of space that they have. I mean, that's where we live in America, right? So they're putting in these massive structures, and when they're putting in these massive structures, they're having to dig so deep because, there are parking requirements for the number of units that you have. So they put in these below grade I mean, I'm sure all of us have gone Daytona Beach, whatever. It's the same setup. You drive underground. That's where your parking garage is. And so they had to remove a lot of material in order to build those understructure parking garage. And in so doing, because you're seaward of the control line, and that's one of the rule requirements, is that any material that you excavate seaward of the control line has to be maintained on the site seaward of the control line. That's why we have a requirement for a grading plan and a cross-section, so we can make sure that we're meeting that provision of the rule, that we know how much material you're cutting out, where you're putting that material on a plan view, and the cross-sectional conceptual top and bottom. And you've given us a table that shows those proposed volumes, estimated volumes, because I've even had projects over the years where a person did not get accurate information from their designers and get the project almost 100% completed, and they got a pile of 2,000 cubic yards of sand because somebody underestimated. I don't like that. That's a pretty uncomfortable situation, because now the project is pretty much done, and now we're scrambling trying to figure out where's all this material going to go. And we do have a compliance and enforcement section which deals with these kind of issues, where if a person then doesn't have, and you can get fined. So we're trying to help you in the beginning, not to get to that phase. While sometimes it may seem like it's overkill or it's overburdening, but it's because, again, we don't want to have things so that we get to the end of the line and now we've got all this material that we don't know what to do with. So that's what the criteria talks about with grading and making sure that we understand what those volumes are. Now, to these two people that have asked about existing pools, I mean, it should not be an issue, because you already have a pool that's existing. So it shouldn't be, because I would imagine you're just going to take the shell out and put it back. You're not going to move it anywhere else on the site. So it really should be a fairly simplistic issue, which I can, talk to both of you all at some point. But at the end of the day,
I'll see you tomorrow.
so at the end of the day, those are different situations, when things are existing. And also from the standpoint of, that's considered redevelopment versus something that is totally gone, and you have no way to reconcile what was there versus what wasn't there. And again, I try to take a practical approach. Yes, sir.
So when a project requires import fill, is there any, I know that one of the rules talks about beach sand.
Yes.
That's not for fill underneath the buildings, is it? That's just for beach renourishment or
No.
renourishment?
It's for all facets of the site. If you're bringing in imported fill, it has to be beach quality, because look at what we just had happen. If you were to put stuff under a house and it's some kind of Georgia clay, well, all of that gets drug out to the beach when there's a storm, right? So the whole point is you have to make sure that it's beach compatible material anywhere seaward of the control line, that you're placing it on the site. Whether that's beach.
How about structural fill for building driveways?
Well, if it's seaward of the control line, it has to be beach compatible sand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What do you say?
No basement.
Yeah, no. No. Because again, the whole point is, like I said, that sand becomes mixed in with the system. And then you're talking about all these other people that have concerns and species and all that other kind of stuff. So it's just better to just make sure that we got beach quality sand across the whole site. Across the whole site. All right, and I think the cross-section, the rest of the application requirements, most people, because it's funny, because I did the last permit manager responsibility I had before I became the environmental administrator was coastal armoring, which that says rigid coastal structures. And that I had to review that for the whole state. So not the whole state, because I still get calls from people that are like in Orange County. Hey, it says you're the coastal. No, I'm not for real. It's the control line statewide, but they see the word statewide and they literally think that means statewide. But rigid coastal structures is the coastal hardening, be it rock revetments or be it vertical walls. And I have not seen many of those over here in Lee County. I don't know if it's just Fort Myers Beach and there are other areas where there really are. I'm anxious to go because we're supposed to go out this afternoon. So hopefully the rain, because I looked at the forecast this morning, holds off so I can see. Because I don't see many of those in Fort Myers Beach. And I think that's because Fort Myers Beach has the benefit of a beach project. So that makes a difference with hardening those rigid coastal structures. But that's what that means. If you were doing that, that's what will be required. And for the most part, you just click on the application that that's not even part of your review. All right, so I think that's pretty much the 33. I wanted to just quickly touch on 34 because the requirements for 34 are just a little bit different, not in that we are not still needing information to assess the project. It's really how we review that material, and also to go to the aerial here. So again, as we talked earlier, this blue line is the general permit line. What's a no-brainer is if you have a general permit line and your structure is landward of the general permit line, and of course, obviously, you're still seaward of the CCCL, then you can build pretty much. That's something that doesn't require a lot of extra input. It's when you start, I want to be seaward of the GP line, that it becomes a problem. Because if your structure that you're replacing, and also it's the context of not just the property itself, it's what you're doing. So if the structure is going to be seaward of that general permit line, that's generally considered the first line of construction. And that's not something that you could probably do under the general permit process. But clearly, people that are landward, I'm trying to work with them. Okay, you're landward. Let's just have a conversation about what you need to submit, because there is no request for additional information process. It has to be completed because it's a 30-day turnaround. But again, the requirements are still the same. You got to have a topographic survey. It's got to show all this stuff. It's got to show the GP lines, mean high, seasonal high. All of that is captured in 62B34. I know, so many things. But not too many people are, they're submitting the general permit, but they're submitting it when they really mean to be submitting the individual. Because, like I said, that's the nomenclature I think that's on the website that I'm going to do something about, because to say general permit and people think that means that's just a regular permit that I'm supposed to go through is a little confusing. So, let's see here. All right, so here. Okay, so here's the application for the general permit. Thank you. Again, it looks almost conceptually the same, except it says application for a general permit. The owner, the agent, again, all of this is required, signatures, a description, address. And as you can see, there's not as much information here. And it also has two headings. Applicants with projects landward of a general permit line are required to submit the following items. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See? Sounds pretty, but it's really not. Straightforward. Then it says, in addition to the above application items, applicants with projects that are not landward of a general permit line are required to submit the following items. And again, because this goes into the whole, do you really meet some of the other criteria? Because the general permits are supposed to be designed to, if you've got something that's pretty simple, well, and probably all of you are going away saying nothing is simple. From what I take away today, none of it's simple. But at the end of the day, the statute, which is again the law, said that we had this ability to utilize this platform, and it's under 161, I believe it's like 18, number 18. And it said that we can issue these things because what it says is that the person is noticing you that within 30 days they're going to begin construction. But we didn't want people just running amok and just going out there, oh, I'm going to do this. And then we had stuff that was improperly cited or improperly constructed. So we came up with this supporting rule because the statute is usually very loosely written, if you will, and in broad sweeping terms, because it has to apply to every place around the state. Whereas when you get into the rule, it gives you the specifics that have to be met and the things that have to be submitted to support your request. So in this case, it says application fee, and this is what I said, I noticed some of this stuff is not been updated because it says 0.030, but it's actually 0.040. So there's some things that I realized here. Well, it does say 03 for that and in 040, so that is right. But the application fee is spelled out there, not on the fee worksheet, because some people will go and get the fee worksheet, which is associated with the project the process we just talked about in 62B 33 versus what's here in 34. And the fees for 34, let's see if I can get to the trying to get to the rule. Okay, here we go. Nope, that's the permit. There we go. So,
Rules are in the Microsoft Word icon at the bottom.
okay. Okay, there we go.
There might be another one.
Yeah, that was the survey requirements. Can I go back? Yeah, okay, good. Uh-oh, went too far back.
Go forward.
All right, so how to get to 34? You would just have to just type in 34?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I can get to our page. Because if I go to the,
Show them how to navigate, Miss.
uh-oh, was that now?
And now you can show them how to navigate your page.
Well, yeah, there you go. So here's the general permit application, and we'll go back, and we get to the general permit. Okay, rules. So there you go. That's where you find all the rules, 62B 33 and 62B 34. And you click there. And then here we get to the full rule.
Give that little down.
Yeah, my problem is seeing.
Get there myself.
Yeah, right? So, 004, which is, that's the actual application procedures under 030, and here's the application fees under 0.040. Yes, sir.
I think I missed the relationship between 33 and 34. I understand there are different sections of the administrative code.
Right.
But are you saying that for structures seaward of the CCCL, we need permits under both sections? Or
No,
what?
sir. No, sir. You can apply for either or. What I was trying to do, and maybe I didn't do that very well, obviously not if you had the question, was to show you that in some context where you have a general permit line, so that's the blue line that's shown on the aerial there.
Okay.
This blue line is supported by everything I'm talking about now in 62B 34. Let me close that so I don't keep opening it. And close that.
34 is specific.
So 34 is
word to that line.
specifically, right. It's specifically, it can be some things, but not much. You know, you're not going to get the benefit of much being seaward of the general permit line and being able to say you qualify, because there's a whole list of criteria, once again, criteria.
So if we are landward of the general permit line, but seaward of the CCCL, we are under 34, and we don't have to worry about 33?
That is correct. I would strongly encourage that if you have that scenario, like if the first thing you do is you go to Map Direct, you see your property, and it shows both a general permit line and coastal construction control line, and your property is within that, I would strongly encourage someone to use that platform. Why? It's a 30-day window, and the fees are, the most you can pay is $500. It's even less than that, depending on what you're doing, which is what I was saying here, where it talks about the fee, and the fee is called out specifically here, if I can find it.
How many are you looking for?
The actual rule I opened. I know I opened it. There it is. Okay. So right here, it says 040, application fees. And there it tells you what your fees are. Minor structure, $100. Dune restoration, $100. Non-habitable major structures, $300. Swimming pools, $300. Single-family dwellings, $500. Minor reconstruction of armoring, I don't know if that says 3 or 5. And then it says in that next sentence that if you're proposing one or more activities, your fee is $500. It's can never be more than $500. But that's what some people miss. They'll send in the fee worksheet for the administrative process and have single family, $4,000, swimming pool, $1,000. It's like, yeah, no, that's wrong fee. You don't even need the worksheet. But they don't see that it says here on the rule, the actual copy of the rule here, that let's see here. Yeah, here we go. So here, it says that the fee is in conjunction with 0.040. But people just go straight to what they see on the website where it says fee worksheet. But that is your fee for a 62B34. So the fees are much reduced, the time is much reduced, but we don't get a chance to ask for information. So you have to pretty much know that if you're submitting this, you meet all these requirements. I mean, again, you have to have sufficient evidence of ownership, again, the local approval, the signed and sealed survey, and all of our surveys say 6 months because that's what everybody feels like when they created this rule was the maximum amount of time that things don't change enough that we could allow people 6 months. Again, that's always something that can be looked at a little differently. Unfortunately, with the GP, you just don't get that by. You have to have everything such that it meets this, because you don't have the long time frame to look at things and review things and send comments back. It has to pretty much be, you got it right up front when you submit it. And then the dimension, site, and grading plan, which meets the same criteria as 34, but you need to submit a site plan, a dimension site plan, and a dimension grading plan. This becomes an option, like I said, if you fall within that zone where you're landward. I would say try to use that platform because it's a quick turnaround. You do have to mail in the check though and I'm working on our IT guys too, the programmers, because you can pay the fee for 33 online, but you can't pay the fee for a general permit. You have to still mail that in. I was like, well, wait, that's kind of backwards. That would be the process that needs it the most because they got 30 days to get things processed. So I asked them if they could go back and change the language so that we can have that happen. But right now, the way the rule is written, you do have to mail in your check for the 62B34 process. And I think that was it, because I know this gentleman had a question about the fee for 34. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions about 34. Kind of went through that quick because not a lot really falls under that provision. I mean, there are some properties that I'm seeing that are coming in where they're on the seaward side, and because it's a single family dwelling, and I'll say this, because one of the criteria for the GP, the general permit, is that you cannot have a pool that's greater than 2 feet below grade. So if you got a pool and it's not elevated and you're trying to put in a 5 or 6 foot deep pool, then that kicks you out of the GP process. So that's some of the things that I've seen, or I've seen where they have excavated material, but then they were saying, oh, we don't have a place, so we need to put this on another site. Well, you can't do that under the GP process either. So there are just some limiting things that people don't recognize about the general process that I just don't try to like go right on in, but just say the safest thing is if you're in that region, yes, maybe take a look at that or give me a call. Because look, I'm here to answer any questions. Even when I get somebody hired and put in the county responsibility, I'm still going to be there to provide oversight. But at the end of the day, it's just because I understand and know that people are trying to get up and running as soon as they can. And I'm strongly trying to encourage that. But here again, there's just limitations on the areas where that becomes applicable.
So quick question, you had mentioned some things that are authorizable with the field permit.
Yes.
Can you just summarize which those activities?
Okay, so generally speaking, and I wish Kelly had been here, she could really articulate that for herself. But minor structures, the whole process of the field permit, and again, that's something that you would just contact our field rep, who is Kelly Kramer, and her information is on our website. But you contact her and let her know you're interested in getting a field permit. And it's literally a form she fills out, you sign it, and that's the end of the story. Those processes are supposed to be minor and without controversy. One of the things that we have found over the years is that when we had dune walkovers, which by all accounts, they're minor, except, because there's always an exception with the control line program. If you're building ADA dune walkovers, or you're building walkovers that have major ramps, which typically translates into ADA as well, or they're like using 10-inch posts, those are not considered minor. So those would not qualify under a field permit process. The other thing about dune walkovers is if you're building them in an easement or some kind of right-of-way, because that tends to be something that, and I'm sure you guys can appreciate these that are representing your condominiums. Some people in the condominium just don't want to go along with what you got going on. Imagine that, right? So we don't like to do things when we have those kind of situations where it could potentially backfire and somebody challenge it, and it's under a field permit process. Because we've had litigation before about dune walkovers and easements. So the guidance was given to the field inspectors not to manage those on their level, but to kick them up to administrative level in-house, when Tallahassee, when I say in-house. But the things that they do is dune walkovers when they're 4-inch posts, 6 in some cases if it's a condominium, 4 to 6 feet wide. Like I said, no ramps, no encased in concrete, minor decks. And again, if they're on grade or POW supported, you're not taking out a lot of vegetation to do these things. So it's just like basic things that just don't really increase the level of what could potentially be impacts to the beach and dune system or to marine turtle habitats. Nothing with lighting can be done under a field permit process. Absolutely cannot, because again, it's light. And that always either has to be reviewed by somebody in Tallahassee or it has to be something that FWC does. Sand, they can issue permits for sand, whether it's an erosive event, or if it's storm related. They do have maximum amount of material that they can issue in those field permits. A lot of times in conjunction, and Kelly, I really appreciate her, and she's been around for a few years, and so she really understands the job. And A lot of times she'll call me and say, hey, I got this, what do you think? And I'll just say, hey, put it on the field permit, you did this based on conversation with me. Why? Because again, I'm looking at, yes, protecting the department, protecting myself in what we do, but also let's get things done. I mean, let's just don't hold people up for the sake of holding people up. So, dunes, sand for dunes, sands for loss of material, vegetation planting. You don't need a permit to do demolition, except, again, if you're not taking down the existing grade more than a foot. So you can do demolition, but it doesn't mean you can go down and cut out a basement if there's a basement there and do that under no permitting required.
So if you're taking out pilings?
Well, depends on how they're taking them out. If they're just gonna, if they're just gonna pull them out, no. But if they're actually gonna do an open cut to remove them, yes, because you're excavating, you're having to do some kind of, and it doesn't mean that it couldn't be done. It's just that we want to make sure, again, one of our major criteria for issuing any kind of permit is, do we have a good understanding of where the excavated material is going, especially if it's seaward of the control line. So that's the reason why we shy away from those kind of requests being handled under a field permit process. Yes, sir, in the back.
Say Hurricane Ian brushed up a bunch of sand from a dune system and put it right in people's houses. They need a permit for that to
No.
remove the sand, or they can just do that on
Yes.
their own? Okay.
And that's something I didn't really go through a lot, and only because, like I said, 2 years out, I mean, we even actually still have the emergency order active, and the reason for that was because more driven by the Volusia County situation where there was a grant in place to allow people to capture some of the costs for what they were doing with their coastal armoring. But at the end of the day, the EFO allows certain, it delegates, so EFO, emergency final order. And those are the final orders that are issued by the governor and then translates into our secretary issuing a supplemental emergency document that describes specifically which counties are captured in that emergency process, what things are allowed under that emergency process. And under any emergency final order that I've ever seen drafted in the years that I've been here, it always delegates some activities locally. Not a lot of municipalities want to encumber, oh, it's my responsibility to issue permits or say what, but it does. Putting sand back, no issue, because we want people to be able to push things back to where they just got pushed up from.
Okay, so they can move it back into the dune system, but they can't just remove it and then take it off site. They
Yeah,
gotta
no, you
push it
can't do
back.
that. Right.
Got it, okay.
Right,
And
and
then what
that's
about-
in any case, whether it's an emergency or not.
What about impacts done to a dune system that are in a easement or a common element of an HOA or something like that? If impacts were caused by Hurricane Ian, is that on the HOA to kind of restore that dune system, or is that something that you kind of coordinate with the DEP, maybe the county or the city? Where does that line kind of fall?
It kind of depends on where that project falls before the hurricane.
Uh-huh.
Like, is it under an already current dune restoration location? So
Okay.
is there already an ECL out there? There's already a dune project out there. Because typically speaking, most of the areas that have dune projects, they come back and place sand.
Okay.
Not immediately most times, but they try to get to it as fast as they can to try to help. Because again,
Like the DEP would?
No,
Is that
no,
what you're
the-
saying? Or the city or county?
right, because
Okay.
when there is a dune project in place, it's usually a project that is, well, first of all, every time issued to a municipality. A single resident or condominium cannot get a dune project
Right.
because there are like easements, public access issues, and criteria that has to be demonstrated to say you're even eligible for a dune project.
Okay.
So all of that, if there's a dune project, generally speaking, they try to utilize, because with all of these things, there's federal dollars to get those areas back up. Because again, as much as it seems like it's been convoluted in the discussions today, we do want to try to get people back up and running as fast as we possibly can.
Right.
We really do.
Okay, so if the HOA, for example, they own a parcel that's kind of over a vegetated dune system, and it's not regulated by the city or county, it's their responsibility to kind of maintain that?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Well, is there a control line?
Yeah, this is all seaward of the control line.
Yeah, so then it would be the HOA's responsibility.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Let's see, I'm trying to make sure I went over the major things. Anybody have anything that I just thoroughly confused it and you need me to go back, or you got enough to at least manage today and then you'll come see me?
I'd like to come see you.
Okay, absolutely, I'm gonna be here through Wednesday, and then Thursday in Sanibel. Okay, I think if anybody else, thank you all so much. It was great opportunity here.
Thank you. So, you want to take a quick break and then come back for,
Yeah, we can do that.
you need like a 10-minute breather?
Yeah, because we're gonna just kind of like answer some questions now,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
So, just give
Yeah,
it
I'd like-
10 minutes. That's okay.
Yeah.